welcome to the ADHD Social Playbook Podcast. I am your host, Caroline Maguire. Before we get into this is part 2 of my conversation with ADHD experts Amanda Morin and Emily Kircher-Morris. So if you have not watched part 1, click on the link in the description and go back, watch part 1, and then come to part 2. In part 2, we took a deep dive into this concept that people talk about all the time of preparing ADHD kids for the real world, and this idea of accommodation and the fact that we all do need to meet expectations and be prepared for the real world. But how can we also do this while setting ADHD kids up for success and understanding that we all have accommodations in life? We have accommodations when somebody prints something out for us or sends us an email again, or in my case, sends me the link for the 300th time. So we have this really great, rich discussion about this concept. Let's get into it. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. One of the things I love that you say in the book that I want to just bring to the surface, because I was so happy, I was literally doing a jig. The whole argument of I'm preparing them for the real world. Now I hear this once a day from school systems, right? And I want kids to be ready for the real world, as do we all. However, you speak really well to the fact that, what does that look like? And just speak to that for a minute, because I feel like there's people listening to this who are like, okay, but they have to be in the real world and you have to adjust and you have to whatever. And it's okay, yeah, but do you?
Well, and you can adjust when you're in the real world. You get to choose what your real world looks like, right? And I think Emily and I have had this conversation a number of times. We had it when we were writing the book, and Emily really made the point in a way that I thought was exceptional. And one of the things we did in the book is we did conversations between the two of us, so you can see sort of our different perspectives, which was
I love that.
Super fun. And at one point, Emily said, but in the real world, I can choose not to be an accountant if I don't want to be an accountant because I'm not good with numbers. And I was like, oh, it was like a magical moment for me. I was like, of course.
I always think when we get to this real world conversation, I think about the number of people who I've met who said, oh yeah, I had ADHD. I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was a kid, but I don't have it anymore. I'm not ADHD anymore. And I'm like, I go, are you actually not ADHD, or have you now gotten to a place in your life where you get to choose the environment that you're in, where you get to do something that's your area of interest, where you have that novelty or that, whatever it is that drives your brain and your motivation. So you've created a space for yourself that brings your strengths to the surface, as opposed to being in a classroom setting that is constantly focused on the things that you're not doing as well. And that's the other part of it too. It's we talk about this, and when we think about so much of neurodivergence can be supported by modifying the environment and being more flexible with things. And that's what the real world allows people to do that school just doesn't. And teachers get really overwhelmed. They feel like, well, if I do it for this kid, I have to do it for all the kids. And I would also say to that, yeah, okay, do it for all the kids. If you make it available, it's just part of your system. It's not that big a deal. But they also get overwhelmed and think that they have to change everything that they're doing, and they don't. It is small little tweaks that give that latitude for your neurodivergent kids to find the things that work for them. And in many ways, if you really want to prepare them for the real world, you need to give them that agency and autonomy to make those decisions for themselves and learn how to self-advocate, because those are actually the skills that are going to work for them. They need to know how do I work best? What are my strengths? And how can I apply those in various situations to solve whatever problem it might be? It is not so much about, you need to be able to sit in your chair. You need to be able to be quiet. You need to be able to get your work turned in on time all the time. Because even with that, other than maybe tax bills, or some other things, most things in the real world, like deadlines, are negotiable. Most of them. It's if I have something at work and it's I need a little bit of extra time or a buffer, I can do that. Or I can go to Amanda and I can say, hey, Amanda, I'm running short on time. Can you help me with this? And you can't do that in school. School is much more rigid than what the real world is.
Much more rigid. Much more rigid.
Yeah. And there's a piece of it too where we as educators sort of have this idea of what the real world is going to look like, but we don't ask students, what will your real world look like, right? What is it you want to do with your life? What does thriving and thriving look like to you? What does success look like to you? If we're trying to prepare them for the world that looks to us like success and not asking them, what do you want to do? And not preparing them to be able to look at themselves from a strength-based perspective and not just a deficit-based perspective, right? If we don't give kids the opportunity to explore what they love and find out who they are, then are we setting them up for the world they're actually going to walk into? Or are we setting them up for the world that we think they should be walking into? And there's a big difference there. And I say that having been both a teacher and a parent, and knowing in both cases, I've had to adjust my own expectations for the person, the child, the student who's right in front of me, and take a step back and be humble and say, actually, what do you want?
And I think one of the reasons I've had success with schools is because I'm a fairly successful person. So I've been able to say to them, I'm not trying to dumb this down, right? I went to Oxford. I went to a top college. I believe in success. However, how I did that was not how most people did it, right? And I think often when we speak to this, I think they think we're assuming that kids are going to not meet benchmarks. We're giving them this free ride. And I just don't think that's true. And I love what you're saying, Amanda, because they get to choose what they want. And even in college, you get to arrange your life more than you get to arrange your life, and one of the things I have really talked about, and I've just been visiting colleges with my daughter this year, who's neurodiverse and very out and open about it. She made a video with Jessica McCabe, so I'm allowed to talk about it. And she one of the things I was leery of and told her is she wanted these smaller schools. And I said, that's great. I love small schools. I went to a small school. Except if there's one chemistry professor and he is a tyrant. And in order to pass organic chemistry, you can only go through him. And so we developed questions we would ask on every single tour. How do you treat neurodiversity? We had all these questions we developed. And one of the questions she would ask was, how many professors teach econometrics? Because she wants to do economics and psychology. Because it's a tough, tough course. And if there's only one, guess what? You're out. Because now we're back to that suppression of, I can't get around this one person and the way they do things. But if we think about it, that's what high school and middle school and elementary school is. It's being at this sort of behest of one teacher, one math teacher, one whatever teacher who controls things. And I think that when parents I'm just like speaking to parents now, when you're thinking about all this, just think about that, right? That doesn't happen in the real world. In the real world, there's a million of, companies. There's a million jobs. There's even coveted jobs. There's a million of them. Even really top Wall Street jobs. There's more than one. All right, Amanda, tell us about the shapeshifter because I love this so much.
So the shapeshifter, not unlike the chameleon, is adept at sort of changing how they show up in different crowds, right? And I think to some degree, one of the things I would say the difference, we all know of or have been that kid who's like, I can fit in with any crowd, right? I don't have my crew, I don't have my squad, but I can fit with the athletes. I can fit with the mathletes. I can fit with, I don't even know what they are anymore. I'm just showing my age here, but what the shapeshifter is doing is changing their interests. They're changing their opinions. They're changing sort of their patterns of speech. They're changing who they are in different groups of people so that they are feeling connected to the group of people they're with at that moment. Right. I have a student who said to me something that just really made this come really clear to me. Her biggest concern is being what she calls perceived. She doesn't want to be perceived. And I was like, whoa, what that meant is she doesn't want to show up and have people know exactly what her opinions are or what her thoughts are, or she doesn't want to use words that other kids wouldn't use in her crowd. So she is consistently thinking about who she's with in order to make sure she's using the speech pattern, she's wearing the right things, so she's literally just sort of like morphing as she goes from place to place and doesn't have a sense of continued identity. This kid that I speak of is self-aware enough to be able to say that, right? And most kids are not. And I think that's important to note. Most kids are not. But the thing is, there's no through line there, right? In the shapeshifter, there is no through line of I continue to have this trait that comes with me everywhere because I'm so needing to feel that connection and feel like I'm part of something that I don't even necessarily know who I am. And I'm shifting that and adopting it. I'm going to tell a quick story here because it's funny now. It wasn't funny then. I actually was a shapeshifter. And I didn't even think about this. I was a shapeshifter when I was much younger. When I was in like 6th grade, one of my close friends was an exchange student from Australia. I spoke with an Australian accent for half of my 6th grade year.
I don't think I've ever loved you more. Oh my God, I've never loved you more.
I didn't even know I was doing it. I just picked up that pattern because I was so there with this student. And it's just like the most embarrassing thing to think about now and hilarious too.
It is so cute. It is a great example of the shapeshifter though, because you literally took on an Australian accent.
I really did.
Oh my God, I love that story. By the way, I used to go into school speaking a British accent, and don't do that. It does not make you popular. It's not a path to glory. I didn't do it to shapeshift. I did it because I was like a little theater kid, a little actress, and I like to talk that way. Anyway, but I think it's so true, and I think that the backdraft of this too for the shapeshifter is they don't really know who they are, right? They don't know how to really stand up for themselves because there's some correlation between being able to sort of say, this is my opinion, and then also being able to say, okay, I don't like this or whatever. And I see them as adults who are completely masked, completely lost, unable to tell you, like, is it vanilla or chocolate? Is it cheeseburger or hot dog? They have just shape-shifted so much. And I also think that what ends up happening is that they don't have the authentic connection that they desire.
Right. That's exactly right.
The backdraft, and I don't know if Amanda, this was true for your Australian days, but the backdraft is really to me that they end up saying to me, I don't have any real connection. And they don't understand why, because they're like, oh, I'm doing everything everyone wants. And I'm like, but that's why.
And they're still craving it, right? And that's the piece that I think we overlook sometimes. It's not, they're not getting what they need from that. My Australian phase did not last very long because I realized like it wasn't a true friendship in the way I needed either, and no offense to my Australian friend, it was just I didn't know how to connect. I didn't know how to be anybody other than sort of an imitation of her at that time, right? And so I just want people to understand that shape-shifting may look like a really good skill, right? Because we're like, wow, you can fit in with anybody. But what they can't do is fit in with themselves because they don't know who they are. And so I would encourage people to be able to say, like, if you can fit in with anybody, that's great. Tell me who you are. Tell me who you are.
And I also think that there's something we forget about kids where they used to say this to me all the time about my daughter. They would say, we can put her with any group. She'll be friends with anyone. And she wasn't a shapeshifter because she's my offspring. And so she's pretty steadfast.
She's got ideas.
She's got ideas. But what it did was it left her without real social connections because you're constantly moving these kids. And it's something I often talk to school systems about. I'm like, listen, there is that buffer kid, that kid you can move around anywhere. But if you move them every year, they don't have any true deep friendships because they're constantly being bounced from place to place as your buffer. You're the adults. You have to find help for the kids, not them. They're not here to do your job. And I think that's something else, Amanda, that like you were probably put in a position where you weren't maybe with your people. You were with whoever they needed you to be with.
Yeah, that changed. I'll be really clear in saying, once I hit high school, I was fully myself, and have probably not stepped back from that since. I have opinions and thoughts and all of that, which is great, right? But it took me, years and years and years to realize, like, who am I? Who am I? And that's when I started making true connections, and so with the students that I work with the teachers that I work with my own children, that's something I really, really try to impart is give kids that space to be who they are and realize, like, they're going to try on personalities because that's what kids do, right? They try on personalities the way that they would try on different outfits, right? But at some point, they're going to realize this is a piece that I'm keeping, and this is a piece that I'm keeping, and this is a piece that I'm keeping. And that all comes together to, like, this is who I am. But we have to give them space to be able to do that. And, I'm just going to say as a parent, and we have to give them space to realize that we may not love that. We may not love the pieces
Maggie
that they
just
try
asked
on.
me to order a septum ring for her. And so she's 15. It's magnetic though. So we did. I'm like, yeah, sure. Here you go. Whatever.
Yeah. When my daughter was that age, she was like, I'm going to dye my hair. And I was like, okay. And she didn't because she really wanted me to have a different reaction. But
you were supposed to have a big reaction.
I was supposed to have a big reaction.
You didn't play your role right.
I know.
Feedback.
But I was just like, you know what? That can be changed. Like, do what, if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. I didn't love the idea of it, but that's, that was what she was trying on at that time.
Yeah. But that's a real process though, that identity formation. And I think that that's one of the wonderful things about school, and especially middle school and high school, hopefully, is that there are these different opportunities and these different groups where hopefully people can find a space where they can be their authentic selves. I think elementary school doesn't lend itself to that quite as much because there aren't often as many extracurriculars or just the opportunity to interact with kids outside of your own class or grade. But that's such an important psychological step and process to becoming self-actualized in the long run, and being able to find those places in who you are and who you want to be.
One of the reasons I'm really glad, just to bring it full circle, that you all put masking in the book is that I think it's really important for educators to come to understand these terms and understand what's going on and understand that they play a pivotal role. Because the more we push kids into these boxes, the more then we have to unwind that later. And I was really happy that you had that discussion in the book. I thought it was like really unique and one of a kind because, I buy every book that comes out on all these topics, right? I have like so many bookshelves. It's just, I have a real book buying problem, but,
book buying is never a problem. Nope.
But when I read them, nobody discusses this element. I mean, really, it's all about like, how do you, help the student be a better student? And that's great. That's fine. But, it's those psychological impacts that I feel like are so under discussed and also that affect kids' happiness. Cause like, do we want them to get everything done, be really unhappy?
Yeah. No, we don't. Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. Right. But I would also say there's something that, I don't know that I've ever said this out loud necessarily, but I think there is benefit to having Emily and I as neurodivergent people and parents to neurodivergent children write this book, right? Because we put in there the things that we needed when we were the students who didn't have them, right? And so not to say that everybody who writes anything about neurodivergence and neurodiversity has to be neurodivergent, but I think it added this layer of these are the things that we want people to think about because we know what it's like when it doesn't happen.
Oh, well said. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad I had you to talk.
Yeah,
this was such a fabulous discussion.